should be fine. Hopefully you can hear me at home. Hello to Amos. And so basically, it's almost double what he came up with, the Chumrah. Then instead of 86 milliliters, it has to be around 150 milliliters. That's a big cup. That could make things more difficult. So when we're dealing with a mitzvah d'oraita, some people say you should be stringent. This is where we left off in practice. Page 219, we're in Rav Melamed's Pnei Halacha, reading the chapter about the Seder night. It's the last chapter in the book, the chapter 16, section 8 in the middle. And it says, in practice, the lenient opinion is the standard. And this is the practice of the Sfaradim. As I said, 86, gematria of kos. And if you need to, you can be lenient even for 75 milliliters, following Rabbi Melamed's more precise calculations. Believe it or not, it has something to do with the Rambam's coin. He measured out the measurement so these are measurements of volume, but there's also the equivalent measurement by weight, as we mentioned. And he used something called a dirham. Dirham is a dirham. Yeah, it's a coin. And so Rav Chaim Naeh took the coin that he found from a Turkish dirham and measured it, and it came out to be whatever 86 or something like that. But actually, we have now been privileged to find coins, the dirham coins. It's better now? Okay. We found dirham coins from the time of the Rambam. And when he gives his measurement, it's in dirhams. And those coins, if they haven't changed in the course of time, which pretty much we can estimate, they're a little smaller than the Turkish ones. That's why he gets to the 75 instead of the 86. But be that as it may, that's not a major difference. The major difference is whether you're machmir for the Chazon Ish or not. And that's almost double, as I said. So let's see what he says. The Ashkenazim, Mishnah Berurah states, Mishnah Berurah, we mentioned him a number of times, the Chafetz Chaim became accepted as a gold standard for Ashkenazi Psak. He states that regarding the practice of Ashkenazim, it's best to take the stringent opinion into account with regard to mitzvot of Torah origin, like Kiddush and Avdala. However, when it comes to rabbinic mitzvot, like the 4 cups at the Seder, where the minimum amount that must be drunk in order to recite a bracha achrona, a blessing recited after eating or drinking, we use the smaller measure, in keeping with the majority opinion. Those who wish to be stringent who enjoy drinking wine are commendable. So this decision of the Mishnah Berurah that you should be machmir on Torah laws, and you can be lenient about everything else, is very significant. This year specifically, it's a little complicated, right? We said, what are the mitzvah d'oraita on the Seder night? So we said eating the matzah. The 4 questions is not telling the story. That's the way, part of one of the ways telling the story is a mitzvah d'oraita. But what else is there? The Haggadah, right? Yeah. So the wine, is it a biblical mitzvah to drink wine? It's the Rabbanan. It's the Rabbanan. So if it's the Rabbanan, you can use the smaller measure. But the Maror, we said also, the common approach is it was the Oraita in the time of the temple when we had a Korban Pesach. But since we don't have a Korban Pesach, the Maror becomes the Rabbanan as well. And so really the only mitzvot Oraita we have are of course, don't eat chametz, but there's no measurement to that. And how much chametz are you not going to eat? Have an empty cup of chametz, how big does that empty cup have to be? No. So really, the mitzvah d'oraita, the positive commandments are eating the matzah and eating and telling the story. And so the wine, the 4 cups of wine, really, it's a rabbinic mitzvah, so you could be lenient. The first cup is interesting because it's kiddush. Kiddush is a mitzvah d'oraita to say kiddush on Shabbat, Zachor v'Shamor, we used to say kiddush, but doing it on a cup of wine is not necessarily d'oraita. There's opinions about that. And so some people say you should have a little bit of a bigger cup or a much bigger cup for the first cup of the 4 cups, because you're also doing kiddush, and kiddush could be d'oraita, especially this year. It's Shabbat and Yom Tov. So you might have a mitzvah d'oraita to doing kiddush on the wine. And that if you want to be machmir, get the Chazon Ish's bigger shita, bigger approach. I wanted to teach my children. It's a little bit of a crazy thing I've been doing. I wanted to teach my children to rely on the regular 86 milliliters, because when my kids, they're beautiful, they're amazing, and they're so motivated to be good, to do the right thing, and the most natural way, the easiest way to do that is to be machmir on everything. Machmir on everything, you go crazy. So, and also, to be machmir on anything, it could lead you to not know the different opinions, and to not recognize them, and not accept them as valid. And so I found myself, and also, as we're going to see, the ideal is to drink the whole cup. If you don't drink the whole cup, you should drink at least the majority of the cup, 51%. And if you're going to drink 4 cups of wine, of regular wine, and the cup is very big because you're machmir with Chazon Ish, it's going to hurt you in the real mitzvah doraita of telling the story, because you're going to be so drunk and fall asleep that you won't be able to do the rest of the mitzvot of the Seder night properly. And so there's always a balance here. So it's not, you can't be machmir on everything, because you're pulling the covers in both directions. It goes one way or the other. You pull it one way, it gets shorter than the other way. So I found myself a Kiddush cup, which is precisely, and I measured it, it's precisely 86 milliliters. And I use this every Shabbos, and for a long time, to teach them, this is good enough. It's even more than 75, it's 86, okay?
Like a shot?
It's like a big shot glass. It's a very big shot glass. It's not very big, but it's smaller than most Kiddush cups that you'll buy in the Judaica store. Although in my day, when I was growing up, all the Kiddush cups in the Judaica stores were smaller. And the truth is that a book has been written on the subject. Truth is, probably many books have been written on the subject, but specifically about this issue of what size Kiddush cup should you have. They found eyewitness accounts, and even the artifact still exists, of the Chazon Ish's Kiddush cup himself, and the wide Kiddush cup which he gave as a wedding present to somebody, who got married, one of the big Dolim. I forget the names right now. And the Kiddush cup, lo and behold, did not have the shiur Chazon Ish. In other words, when he was analyzing the subject and discussing the contradiction between the various sources, the Notability came up with this theory that maybe, it should be doubled because, that's the size of our eggs nowadays, and the Chazon Ish proposed that we should follow that. But halacha lema'aseh, meaning practically, there's quite a few stories that make it clear that this was not all or nothing. It was not that they paskin that way, that if you don't have 150 milliliters in your Kiddush cup, it's not kosher. Maybe that's a chumrah, maybe that's a best practice, but it never really became standard in the entire Jewish world. B'nai Brak maybe became standard. B'nai Brak sort of slowly expanded to influence the rest of the Jewish world everywhere. But Kiddush cups, on the whole, never used to have 150 milliliters. Usually had the 86, and probably somewhere in the middle. So there's even evidence about the Chafetz Chaim's own Kiddush cup. Right? It's not so long ago and it could be it didn't have the shiur of 150 milliliters. So it's good to be machmir. Mishnah Berurah said you should be machmir, but don't consider all those cups that are smaller to be doing something wrong, especially since this is, even according to Mishnah Berurah, it's not really a mitzvah doraita according to most poskim. Mitzvah doraita are matzah and the story. And it's better to be machmir on the story than to be machmir on the amount of alcohol content that you're getting in the 4 cups. And so that's why on a night like that, when you have to drink 4 cups, if you have a smaller cup, you'll be able to drink the 51% of each cup, which is ideal, as opposed to having such a big cup and you just take a small, a cheekful, which is good enough, but not ideal. So there's always, balance of, what's the best practice. Best practice on one issue is you have more volume of wine. But the best practice on the other hand is to drink the half of the cup or the majority of the cup as more than just a cheekful, which is the minimum. Balance out which one you're going to do better. Is it better to have a bigger cup or drink less of it, or to have a smaller cup and drink more of it? So it's hard to find the correct balance. Yes, Ravid? Yeah.
What about the tenth of a liter? I read something about Rabbi Feinstein. He's talking about a tenth of a liter.
No, Rabbi Feinstein spoke in ounces. He's American. And they have a different metric system. 2.2 ounces became the standard when he did the measurements, and he taught all of America to know that, and there's to be on some issues you have to have 2.2 ounces, on some issues I think 1.8. There's a different measurement system over there, but pretty much it translates to what we're talking about here in milliliters, and most of the world uses milliliters. Sorry for the Americans. But there's just lots of numbers. Bottom line is, most of the Kiddush cups have 86 or at least 75, so you're good to go. And that's a little bit all we're going to say on the topic. Now we're going to talk more about this topic of measurements when we get to the mitzvah of matzah, how much you have to eat of the matzah. But for now, for the cup, we're done. We're just going to finish up here on the top of page 220. Yes, another question.
I read something about when we drink the cup of wine, we need to say a bracha.
Of course.
We only have limited time, because when it's longer than 9 minutes, we need to say the bracha again. That's right?
Not imprecise. It's imprecise. We're gonna cover it on the next page.
Okay.
You're right, but it's we need to get a little more precision.
Okay. Thank you.
There is a time measurement in terms of what's considered to be a normal drinking. Like I drink my coffee here.
Amen.
Keeps my throat from getting dry while I'm teaching and speaking a lot. But I take a little sip, and then another 10 minutes passes, I take another sip. Another 10 minutes passes, I take another sip. I'm not going to make another bracha. I have in mind from the beginning that my bracha covers this entire session.
But if you switch to other
However, when the mitzvah is to actual drink, this measurement, you're supposed to be drinking a certain amount, so then that drinking has to be preferably all at once, or without a long duration in between the sips. So it's not really a question of the bracha being valid, it's a question whether the drinking, you fulfilled your mitzvah of drinking properly. There's no mitzvah for me to drink my coffee, it's just, it's my comfort. Southern comfort. You don't know what I have in here.
Weinberg. Question, maybe it's not to do with the wine, but what you was talking about the cup of coffee, like if you finish this one and you go refill it, you have to say another bracha, or you already covered it from the first time?
So it's a good question. A lot depends on your intention when you're making the bracha to cover any and all future drinks, but it also depends on physical factors. Like if you change your place, if you move to a different location, that could be considered an interruption from your previous bracha. You might need a new bracha. If you went outside to the street, you would have to make a new shahakol.
But if you're in the same place and you switch now you drink coffee.
Well, if you intend at the beginning and there hasn't been too long of a break in between drinks, you keep going on that initial bracha, can keep going for a long time, as long as there's not, I think the standard is 72 minutes, as people say, is too long of a break, which totally separates you from the first bracha that you made. But we'll learn about it. Let's just finish about the cup of wine, and then we'll read inside section 9, and then we'll be much wiser about all the details. First thing, though, finishing about the cup on page 220 at the top, one must also take care to meet the sage's requirements for a kol shel bracha, a cup of wine linked to the performance of a mitzvah. You should know this applies to all mitzvot where we have a cup of wine, like the Kiddush cup all year round. Like if you have a wedding, B'ezrat Hashem, we're all going to be attending a wedding this week. If you heard the good news, Reuven decided to marry his wife.
Oh, really?
They already have 8 children, but they're going to the mikvah.
Oh yes.
Very soon. And as soon as they become officially Jewish, by I think it's going to be Wednesday, they have to get married, a Jewish wedding.
Wow.
So I believe we're all going to be able to participate. Bezrat Hashem.
Beautiful.
In today's Monday, so by Wednesday, I think we'll get the details on that. But in any case, you have to have a cup of wine. The same laws. It has to be a kosher cup. There's rules about what the cup looks like. It has to be solid. Let's see what he says here. A broken cup may not be used. The cup, however large, must be filled with wine. You have to fill the cup to the top. The cup must be clean. By the way, my kids, they know that you have to fill the cup to the top. So as I said, they want to do things so perfectly. So what do? They always fill it up so much that it spills. There's no mitzvah to spill, except for?
Shabbos.
Nope. Avdala, after Shabbos. Motzei Shabbos, there is a custom to spill over. It's a sign of blessing that our cup runneth over, you know. Harikoti lechem brachad b'leidai. I will pour into you blessings until you say no more. I need no more, and that's a symbolic act of spilling a little bit. Only on Motzei Shabbos, though. Only for Avdala, not the rest of the week, and not on Friday night. But you know, kids will be kids, and I did this myself when I was growing up. And you want to make it as full as possible because it says in the halacha the cup has to be full. But the truth is, there's another halacha that you don't know yet until you learn a little deeper, and that is that there is a concept that the cup, it looks like a little bit of a crown on the top of the rim of the cup. It looks like a crown. When do you see that crown? When it's not filled absolutely to the rim. It's a little bit below the rim. That leaves a little bit of a crown. So it's actually best to have it full, but not overflowing. Full, but leaving a little bit is still considered to be full, and that gives you the crown, which is, again, an enhancement of the mitzvah of kos shel bracha. It's called a cup of blessing. And the cup must be clean, thoroughly rinsed inside and out before the first cup. In those days, you know, if you're using clay vessels, they get really dirty and grimy if you don't clean them out. And so nowadays, we talked about it many times, our dishes, our utensils are usually much cleaner, and it's not such a big deal. But ritually, many people still rinse out their cups. If it was sitting and gathering dust for a year, then of course you're going to rinse it out. But from week to week, most people's cups don't need rinsing. But there is this, it's brought in the halacha that you should rinse your cup before using it. However, as long as it has not become dirty, it is unnecessary to wash it again for subsequent cups. Since all four cups are considered one continuum, you don't have to rinse out the cup for all four cups 4 times. Nevertheless, some take care to wash the cup before drinking each time. This is a Sephardic custom based on the Zohar, that I've never seen anybody do that. In the middle of the Seder, you get up and you wash your cup again. I've never seen that. But I'm not Sephardi, so maybe. And really, these cups are pretty clean. It's just, you're using your same cup for yourself. It's not like you're using anybody else's cup. You're not passing germs from someone to the other. As a matter of fact, we have at home a little bit of they sell them, it's like sort of like a Judaica, but they even sell them for the secular world. When you're having a dinner party or something, you have these stemmed wine glasses, you know what I'm talking about, with the long stem. So we have, if we still have them, these little rings of different colors so that you can identify which is your cup. Like if you have to clear the table and put the cups on the side and then you want to come back and give everybody their own cup, how do you know whose is whose? So if you have the different color rings, then you can identify your cup. And because we use the same 2 cups, we have 2 cups before the meal, and then the meal, and then after the meal we've got 2 more cups. So we want to use the same cups. Why wash? And so you find, you sort of have to mark, and if the cups look the same, you're not going to be able to distinguish them. So you have to mark them in some way. In any case, this is the laws of kos shel bracha. Now we go to section 9. How much wine? Russell, you're going to read for us, please, page 220.
How much wine? Optimally, one should drink all of the wine in the cup, which means at least a revi'it. If one uses a large cup that contains more than a revi'it, he should, b'atchila, drink all of the wine in the cup. If he does not want to, he should at least try to drink most of it. At the very least, one must drink most of a revi'it and a melolug mav. Right,
melolug mav means a cheekful.
Okay.
A cheekful. So you have a revi'it and a cheekful. Okay.
Thank you.
In other words,
there are 2 conditions. First, he must drink most of the wine that is required to be in the cup, i.e., most of every eat. 38 milliliters or 76 milliliters in Hazon Ishiur.
Right, 86 divided by 2 is 38. 38, right? So that's why it says 38.
Secondly, this amount must fill millilugmav.
No, 76. No, 76.
No. 86 divided by 2 is 43. So why does he say 38?
It's half.
Oh, no, because he's going by 75. He said his minimum shear was 75, divided by 2 is 35, 38, right? That's the real minimum. Okay, so you have to have most of Ravit. Go ahead. Secondly,
This amount must fill millilugmav. Enough wine to fill the drinker's mouth with one cheek inflated. This is the amount of wine that settles one's mind. For someone with a normal sized mouth, millilugmav a bit more than most of a revi'it. For one with a large mouth, millilugmav is closer to a revi'it. A 13-year-old whose mouth is small and whose millilugmav is less than half a revi'it must drink most of a revi'it in order to fulfill the first condition. Children who have reached the age of mitzvah education.
okay, so just stop there. Basically, he said there's 3 measurements. Ideally, drink the whole cup. If you can't, drink the majority of the cup. If you can't, drinking the majority of a revi'it is enough, as long as it's a malo lugmav. It depends. Most people, the majority of a revi'it is a cheekful, but usually we say a cheekful is about half a revi'it, to tell you the truth. Because when I have my 86 milliliter, it says l'chaim on the cup. I call it my l'chaim cup. My l'chaim cup of 86 milliliters, I make sure to drink half of it at the very bare minimum, because there I get half the cup, and I usually get a cheekful, because a cheekful is usually about half of a revi'it in the average human. I never really measured my cheek, but maybe I should one day. But I did measure the cup, and it's 86 milliliters. In any case, if I...
It'd be a fun class project to...
It could be fun, but a little messy. Spitting out water in front of you. We could do it one day, but I'll bring it in the cup. You know what? It's a good idea. If I remember, I'll bring in the cup and I'll show you. And I don't have a proper beaker that measures, what are they called? Those beakers with the... yeah. Anyways, the more precise ones is what I want. It's important to know, though, by the way, because if you're going to make Kiddush or Avdala on such a thing, what do people do after they make Avdala? The person who's making Havdalah and he drinks the wine, what does he do?
Drinks the whole cup.
Sometimes he drinks the whole cup, but why? Why should he? Why would he? And what does he do then?
He pours out.
And what does he do then? You've seen this probably. Maybe you haven't seen it because you're so busy rushing off to light your cigarette. Chas v'chalila. No. What does he do after drinking the cup of wine?
You put it in another can?
No. That's all these customs. He has to say bracha achrona. You have to say an ala gefen, a blessing on the wine that he drank. But the rule is you only say a bracha after drinking wine or borei nefashot also. If you drink a sip of Coke, you don't say a borei nefashot. You only make a bracha after bracha if you've drunk a revi'it. A revi'it. And that's why, even though to fulfill the mitzvah, maybe a cheekful is enough to actually obligate you in drinking the bracha achrona, you have to drink the entire revi'it. In most cases, it's not so hard, but we say in the Seder Pesach, which of the 4 cups do we say a bracha achrona on?
The last one.
Why? So it's interesting. The kos shel bracha birkat hamazon, we don't usually say a bracha achrona on because we're going to say a 4th cup. We drink a 4th cup for the Hallel. After we drink the 4th cup, we say the ala gefen, and so the 4th cup, you make sure you have to have a revi'it, the 86 milliliters, gematria of course. Okay, so anyways, this is. Also, when this becomes very significant? When do people measure their cheeks? Moshe, you're going to look into that. When do people measure their cheeks? Before Yom Kippur. Why? If someone's sick, in general, we don't drink on Yom Kippur. But if someone's sick, deathly ill, then of course he could drink as much as he wants. It's a pikuach nefesh. It overrides Yom Kippur. But if someone's not deathly ill, he's deathly ill, but the doctor says, you don't have to drink all of the Kinneret. You don't have to drink, a 6-pack. You have to make sure that your body doesn't get dehydrated. So the rabbis made the following calculation. There is something, as we're seeing here, there's something that's called a minimum measurement for it to be considered to be a drink. You had a drink if you had a ravit, or you had a drink if you drank a cheekful. So if you drink less than a cheekful, then we wouldn't allow this for somebody who's healthy. But it's somebody who has to drink. It's better that he drink less than a cheekful. This is where we get into every 10 minutes or so. You break one drinking session from another drinking session. Each drinking session, you're going to drink less than the minimum amount. It's not considered to be drinking, at least biblically. If rabbinically, we have more flexibility for somebody that's sick. So there is many people who have dangerous illnesses, but they're not actively dying or anything like that. But it could get dangerous. Mm-hmm. So the halacha, the psak, the decision is you should drink. It's called b'shi'urim. B'shi'ur, a shi'ur is a measurement. You should drink. Really, what they mean is less than a shi'ur, less than the requisite measurement, every 10 minutes. I'm not going to give you an allowance to drink on Yom Kippur, but not a proper drink. Only small portions of drink. You separate them one from each other. They don't join up together. And that's when you're going to find people measuring out how much is the shi'ur. Shi'ur is a cheekful. Really depends on the person. If it's a very big guy, he can drink lots at a time because it's less than one cheekful. If it's a tiny little person, then their cheekful is going to be very small. So they can have each 10 minutes, they can have a little less. So that's this measurement of a cheekful becomes very significant when it comes to Yom Kippur. But here also that's the minimum amount you should drink from each one of the 4 cups. At least make sure you drink a cheekful, a sip of each one of the 4 cups doesn't qualify for fulfilling the mitzvah. You have to drink at least a cheekful. Better than that, drink half of a ravit. Better than that, drink half of the cup, whatever size the cup happens to be. And better than that, drink the whole cup. So there's many different measurements of how to fulfill, in the ideal form, the drinking. Right? It's rare that there's a mitzvah to drink. Usually there's a mitzvah to make a bar prayer guffin, and you say kiddush. So that it's really only kiddush and the 4 cups. So you have an obligation to drink. You have to make that sure that you fulfill the measurement of. It should be a proper drink. A little sip doesn't qualify as by kiddush. It's different though, right? We said this yesterday. By kiddush, as long as that cheekful, you know what? As long as that revi'it actually, by kiddush, is drunk by everybody participating in the kiddush. If everybody just has a little sip, but the revi'it is downed, it's a kosher kiddush. But if nobody drinks the wine, somebody says the full kiddush and they just have a little sip, nobody drinks at least a cheekful. Even better, if everybody together if everybody takes a little sip and it adds up, then it's fine. But on the night of Seder, you can't join with anybody else. Everybody has a personal obligation to drink 4 cups. So you have to make sure that you have at least a cheekful of each one of the 4 cups, preferably an entire revi'it, which is 2 cheekfuls. Okay, and then even better than that is based on the size of your cup. It looks more opulent, looks more like you're rich man when you finish the entire cup, or at least the majority of the cup. If you're just having a little sip, it's like maybe you're saving it, maybe you're being cheap, and we don't want to give that impression. We don't want to. That's not the proper practice for the night of the Seder. Okay.
So Louis Armstrong could drink a whole bottle because he had very big teeth.
Yes. Well said. Could be. Yafeh. Okay, children, about drinking the cup. I stopped you, Russell, please, page 221 from the top.
Yes, right. Okay. Children who have reached the age of mitzvah education are given 4 cups of wine. From Shulchan Aruch 4:7-15. The age of education is when the child understands the meaning of the things that are said while the cups are filled. Kiddush, Nagadah, Birkat Hamazon, and Hallel. Generally around age 5 or 6. There is no need for them to drink most of a revi'it. Melo lugmad suffices.
So my 3-year-old grandson, just let him be. He doesn't have to drink the 4 cups. He's only 3. Becomes 5 or 6. Then we'll have him drink 4 cups of grape juice. Not so much of it, as he says, a cheekful, and of each one of the cups. That's part of the education process. But till he reaches 5 or 6, then it's just giving him a good experience and a fun time. And I'll make sure to give him lots of chocolate chips, if you remember my custom. Go ahead. One must drink.
One must drink most of the wine in the cup at once. It is obvious that if one drinks half of the necessary amount and then, after a long pause, drinks the second half, he did not drink the necessary amount at once, and thus did not fulfill drinking one of the 4 cups. However, leading Rishonim and Achronim are divided over precisely how quickly one must drink the requisite amount of wine in order for it to be considered at once. According to Rambam, since people are accustomed to drink continuously, albeit with short breaks to breathe or swallow, one is only considered to have drunk at once if he drank continuously, as one would normally drink a revi'it. In other words, the amount of time one takes to drink most of a revi'it must be no longer than the amount of time it normally takes to drink an entire revi'it. If it takes one longer to drink most of a revi'it than it normally takes people to drink a revi'it, he has not fulfilled the mitzvah according to Rambam. Rabbi, on the other hand, maintains that as long as it does not take longer than the time it takes to eat half a loaf of bread, shiur achilat pras, i.e., within several minutes, it is still considered at once.
Okay, we're going to come upon this a lot. This is the measurement of how long it takes to eat like a portion, like a meal. And a pras is a half a loaf. That was considered to be a standard, like we would say today, a roll, an individual roll that you're given on Friday night at Kiddush. You get everybody gets a roll on their plate. So that's probably the size of half of a loaf. And so that the amount of time it takes a normal person to eat that amount, everything within that time frame is going to be added up, even if you say hello to someone in the middle. As long as you finish the food during that time frame, it's considered to be one eating session. Now we're translating, according to the Rabbi, we're translating that into drinking as well. So as long as you can take a few sips of your wine, 1, 2, 3 after the other, but it can't be extended for too long. How long is shiur achilat pras? How long is that a measurement of time that it takes you to eat half a loaf? There's a machloket, of course. Some people say 5 minutes, some people say 6, some people say 9 minutes, some people say 10 minutes. That's what we were referring to before. And I was just saying, to be safe, 10 minutes from each other, that's for sure a separate eating session, right? But this is what we're referring to. According to the Rambam, when it comes to drinking, you don't have that 10 minutes or 6 minutes, whatever it is. You just have maybe, 20 seconds. How long does it take you to down 86 milliliters of drink? It's one drink. It's maybe 30 seconds. So what does he say? Halacha l'maaseh. Turn the page to summarize.
One should preferably follow the stringent ruling of Rambam and drink most of the cup continuously, taking short breaks to breathe and swallow. For the avad, if one drinks most of the wine in the cup within a shiur achilat pras, 6 to 7 minutes, he fulfills his obligation and need not drink the cup again, since the law of 4 cups is of rabbinic origin and the halakha therefore follows the lenient opinion. Nonetheless, some practice stringency.
Okay, so the thing to remember is that it's a little bit of a change of consciousness. Most people that come to the Seder and they're willing to have an experience, a social experience, a cultural experience, even a Jewish one, okay, we're going to do Jewish now for this night. And they come to the Seder and they know there's all these rituals. Okay, they'll participate. They'll have a piece of matzah, they'll have a piece of wine. When you're in the halachic consciousness, you realize that what we're going through in order to tell the story, the big picture remains the same. We're still joining the Jewish people. We're commemorating the Exodus. But it gets defined by certain halachic observances. The 4 cups the eating of the matzah, the eating of the maror, each one is a halachic observance. It's just like you'll be careful to buy a kosher etrog. You're not just going to wave a lemon. You're going to make sure that the etrog is kosher. And just like you're going to, when you read the Megillah or when you read it from the Sefer Torah, there's not supposed to be any mistakes in the Sefer Torah. Every letter has to be properly written. So there's lots of rules about the Sefer Torah. Believe it or not, there's lots of rules about how to drink a cup of wine. And so if you have the halachic consciousness, then you're going to be thinking of that as well. Obviously, you're going to be thinking of the big picture. I'm a free man. God freed me. This is the night. I'm free. I'm going to drink 4 cups of wine to celebrate. But in the back of your mind, I don't know, back of your mind, front of your mind, everybody's got a little bit of a different measurement. You're also going to be thinking halachically. You want to be fulfilling the precepts properly. And what that means is when you're drinking, couple number 1, number 2, number 3, number 4, each time, you're going to try to do it properly. To do it properly means don't just sip and then have another sip a few minutes later, and then another sip a few minutes later. There's a mitzvah to drink a cup of wine. Drink a cup of wine properly, however much it is, whether it's a chikful or a ravit or a majority of the cup, whatever it is. Do that consciously. After you say the Bor Pregafen, we're going to see that there's a mitzvah to recline while you're doing that. And don't do anything else until you've finished. Finish whatever you decide. I'm drinking half a cup. I'm drinking a ravit, whatever it is. I'm drinking a cheekful. Whatever it is, do it consciously. Now I'm doing this mitzvah. And then when you get to the next mitzvah, you'll think about the parameters, the requirements to fulfill that mitzvah observance. And then you'll do that one properly. And then you'll move on to the next one, each one at its proper time. If you're aware, it's no big deal. It's the problem is when your mind drifts and you say, okay, you take I said Bar Pregafin, take a little drink of wine, and you move on to the next thing, or you start talking to your friend. One thing at a time. It's called mindfulness. Be mindful of the present mitzvah observance. When you're drinking wine, you pay attention to how much you're drinking, when you're drinking, how you're drinking, and so forth. Okay? So far we've been talking about the amount and the timing. Sorry?
Drink the entire cup.
If you drink the entire cup without interruption, even according to the Rambam, you're safe.
Right.
You're covered. Right? But it can get hard because people are not so mindful and they just think, oh, okay, you say a bracha, you take a sip. It's like the rest of the year. I make a bracha. As soon as I say a bracha, I can just I don't think about am I having this amount or that amount. Each time I take a little drink. I wet my throat, and that's all I care about. But when I'm doing it as a mitzvah, I know that there's a measurement of wine I'm supposed to imbibe. And so you pay more attention to how much you're drinking and do that right away. And then you can finish the rest of the cup. You can not finish the rest of the cup. You can take your time, whatever it is. But at each stage of the mitzvah observance, do it properly. And the most important thing to remember that most people, how it's not so hard to drink a cheekful. It's not so much. Even a ravit. It's not crazy. It's less than half of a standard wine cup. The wine glasses with the stem. So those are usually big enough to be, 2 or 3 revi'ot at least. And so you drink, a third of your wine cup, and you've done your revi'ot.
Right.
If you do half of the wine cup, you're for sure good.
Should you add more wine if it has a little more?
No. Well, you don't add. That's you don't have to finish. What do you mean? Before when you make the bracha on the cup, it has to be full, and then you drink.
I know that's but you don't finish the cup, but you drink the right amount.
You drink the right amount.
And then you come to the second cup.
For the second cup, you can fill on top of it. Yeah, you have to fill up for the second cup. Each cup, we start with a full cup, and each so But what I was saying is that when you do the cup, you drink. Of course, with joy and jubilation, but you're conscious that you're doing the mitzvah at the same time. And only then do you move on to schmooze with your friends and say, well, lovely wine. I love the Cabernet and the aroma, hints of spice and licorice, right? That's after. That's after you've paid attention to drinking the cup properly, halachically. Yes?
Please don't hang me in the tree. But I will do a question that is a little bit not...
That's what you're here for, Renan. We want your questions like that.
this is the Rabbanan mitzvah,
Mm-hmm.
right?
True.
The rabbis instituted.
Correct. The 4
So
cups of wine. Rabbanan, yeah.
Why they make so complicated?
Very
Drink a
good
cup
question.
of wine
Drink a
and
cup of
that's it.
wine. That's right. So the rabbis.
Why so hard?
Yes, it's a good question. It's a fine question. Hey, Ruben's here. Mazal tov, mazal tov. Amazing. Baruch Hashem. We also have a chatan at the same time. Oh, Yisham Aviyar Yehuda, oh, Bechutz Yerushalayim, Kol Sasso, Kol Simcha, Kol Chatan, Kol Kala. Amazing. You know, most people, there is this concept, some people at a later stage in life, they want to renew their vows. So, doing an official one. Well, good to see you.
Grateful to be here.
Yeah, mazal tov,
Very
mazal tov.
grateful to be here.
Great.
Couldn't have the privilege of studying with a more wonderful group of guys. It's just been,
Great.
This
Great.
is just amazing.
Yes.
I look forward to continuing studying.
Terrific.
I have much more to learn.
Yes, we're all here to learn as much as possible, as much as your other responsibilities allow you to. When the rabbis enacted, it's essentially a commandment, right? We make a bracha, we say, who commanded us, right? Who sanctified us and commanded us to do netilat yadayim. He commanded us with commandments to blow the shofar, to put on the talit. All these are commandments, and so the rabbis, they followed the Torah's lead, and when they made enactments, they gave us commandments sometimes, if it gets defined as such. And the 4 cups, it wasn't just written, the rabbi said, that's a good idea, we should add that. They said, it's a commandment. You must drink the 4 cups of wine. So whenever you have a command, it's law. The law, there's rules, it's a book, the lawyers can fight about it, about some silly thing about a bylaw, about parking and zoning, all day long, and there's how much millions and millions of dollars are spent every day to defend and to argue about these silly bylaws, which were made up by some clerk in some city hall, And what we're discussing now is the rules that made by our holy and pious rabbis, who decided that you must drink 4 cups of wine. And so it gets into everything that becomes regimented. There's rules to it. What's the measurement of drinking? What type of wine you should use? What the cup has to look like? Yes, everything gets regimented. But I agree with you. It seems very counterintuitive at first.
Like the rabbis institute that. So why
That's
have
right.
so many opinions and so many measurements?
Ah.
So many stuff. So
Mhm.
if the rabbi, like one or a group, institute that, why have so many different?
Right.
Understand?
Yeah, I do. The rabbis who instituted this mitzvah, they lived about 2,000 years ago, right? And they wrote down and they passed on this new mitzvah, which they created. And then each generation afterwards, discussed it. It's really like the other civil laws that I was discussing. And somehow each generation of lawyers finds something else to argue about, and some fine point about a new ramification which they never thought about. In other words, nowadays, what did we talk about before? The measurement. Well, they spoke about a revi'ita log, a quarter of a log. Well, we don't have logs anymore, so we have to do some translation to eggs. Oh, well, the eggs. Well, now we use milliliters. How do we translate that? So there's always going to be something that has to be defined and newly defined, and then further defined. And this is the way of the Jews, that we argue about everything, right? So there's different ways of interpretation, different ways of looking at it, and they're all valid. At the end of the day, we have to decide the halacha, what's the standard that we practice. But this is a sort of like a natural development of any legal system, and in particular, once you throw in religion. This is holy lawyers. This is not just arguing about, an extra $1, an extra $1 million, even if it is for your parking space. This is worth gold. This is doing the path of God properly. It's worth more. It's more important to me than any $1 million lawsuit, because I want to do my worship of God in the best way, ideal way possible. Even when it comes to rabbinic mitzvah, I want to make sure I'm fulfilling that rabbinic mitzvah properly. And so, yes, there are many definitions. Now, there's one more rabbinic mitzvah which we have to talk about before we close class today, and we're looking at the clock. And that is leaning, reclining. When you drink the cup, it's not enough to just drink 4 cups of wine and show that you're a king. You have to have a posture like those kings of old who would be leaning on the Roman cots. What are they called? The fainting couches. And so we have to sort of see how to apply that today. Today we don't sit on those fainting couches.
How do we paskin on the posture?
How do we paskin on the posture? That's what you're going to read in 223, 224, and 225. Believe it or not, and 226. So there's 4 pages on this additional mitzvah of reclining on the night of the Seder. Okay, how to recline, when to recline, how to make sure that you do in the best way possible, because this is really what we have. One way we have to get close to God is to fulfill the mitzvot from the Torah and the mitzvah of the rabbis in the ideal way, the best way possible. I don't think my metaphor, it's not equal. It's not like we're trying to earn millions of dollars. It's not like we're trying to earn brownie points in heaven. But we do want to do things in the best way possible. When you're in the army, my kid was just finished the army, and they were training him up, and they were teaching him how to be a good soldier. And the good soldier, it really, they checked up your equipment all the time. Each piece of equipment had to be just so, as perfect as possible. Why? Because maybe in the time of battle, you don't want to be pulling out your telescope, and the tape will fall off and it won't be usable, and there could be life or death. So we don't live that everything's life or death. But what about the Chazon Ish?
Chazon Ish say that the same amount of preciousness that we put, surrender halacha, corresponds to our desire to get close to Hashem.
It shows, right? Sometimes our expression of God, in many times, in other religions, you maybe consider, the person who meditates longer, that shows that he's more into his religious experience. In the halachic world, it gets this religious devotion translates many times into how precise you are about your performance of these actions, of this reclining and just so, drinking just so, and it's a little bit counterintuitive to the what we usually is considered to be a religious experience. It's prayer and devotion, and it is too in Judaism. Also, you have to take care to make sure that you have intention of the heart in everything that you do. But there's also this element of performance of the specific regimented actions, just so in the ideal form. And so that gives lead to lots of nitty gritty, a lot of the tiny little details about exactly what's the best way to, what's the best wine, what's the best measurement, best type of Kiddush cup, and the best way to recline, as we're going to see now. Everything has a few lenses to look through it. We look through it, the legal lens and best practices is part of our religious service, and that's why it gets so central to our discussions. But we can't, of course, ignore. There's other lenses as well, and you have to have the intention. And you have to have the directing your heart towards what you're doing. You have to commemorate the actual, Exodus. Remember that? After all these details, what Exodus? Who left? Somebody left the Ukraine? No. What's this? Okay. Seder. Let's take the few moments and start the mitzvah of reclining. Hopefully we'll finish it today. If I shut up a little bit and let Moshe read, then we'll be good to go. Moshe, take it away. That's section 10 in chapter 16.
The mitzvah of reclining. The sages ordained that one recline while eating matzah and drinking wine at the Seder, because in every generation one must give the appearance of having just been freed from Egyptian bondage, as it is stated. He rescued us from there. This reclining is called Hassava, and was instituted so that a sense of liberation would be apparent in one's behavior. One who is burdened with a task that usually sits upright so that he will be able to rise at once when the time comes for him to carry out his work. Excuse me. Even though sitting upright requires some effort on the part of the back muscles and creates a state of constant tension, the need to be ready for action requires this state of alertness. However, one who has no burdens can lean back and lie on his side restfully, allowing all of his back muscles to relax. This is how we eat on the Seder night, in the manner of deliberating. In the past, people would sit on pillows and cushions, which meant that sitting erect indeed required effort. In such circumstances, Hassava, the position between sitting and lying down, where the entire body reclines on a couch or on a pillow, or on pillows and cushions, was very comfortable. It demonstrated a sense of freedom. But today, people sit on chairs that are not accustomed to reclining on couches or eating while reclining to the side. In fact, if one were to eat while reclining on a couch these days, it would be more burdensome than comfortable. Therefore, according to the Rava and
Ravia, actually, there's
Ravia
yeah, that's how it's pronounced. Yeah,
and Ravia and
Ravan. Yeah.
two leading Rishonim. There's no mitzvah to practice Hassava nowadays. However, most Rishonim maintain that since the sages mandated reclining at the Seder, their ordinance stands firm, and there continues to be a mitzvah to eat matzah and drink the 4 cups of wine while reclining. Today we recline by leaning against the back left of our chairs.
Okay, so there is an opinion which says this whole reclining thing is a relic because we don't just sit that way. But most Rishonim say sages mandated reclining, we still recline, so we lean. This is a very ancient practice, and even if it's not so natural, we do the little left back thing. Reuven, will you read for us a little bit on bottom page 223?
Yes, sir.
The requirement of Hassava.
The requirement of Hassava applies when eating kezayit of matzah, a kezayit of korech, a kezayit of afikomen, and while drinking the 4 cups of wine.
So how many times do you have to do this fancy reclining business? 7. Very good. 4 cups of wine. And then the first 3 are kezayit of matzah, kezayit of korech, and kezayit of afikomen. 4 plus 3, 7. 7 moments during the Seder where usually it's while you're drinking or eating something. You have to make sure that you have the proper posture of reclining. The rest, go ahead, you'll see that.
It is commendable to recline during the rest of the meal as well, but if one finds this uncomfortable, there is no obligation. Laws of chametz and matzah.
Mishnah Torah. So MT stands for, it's the Rambam, Mishnah Torah, yeah.
One need not recline while eating the maror.
Makes sense. MB is Mishnah Bura. Makes sense because maror is to commemorate not the freedom, but the bitterness. So, when you're commemorating bitterness, you're not going to act like you're a free man. You're going to, not recline. Specifically, don't recline. That's right. That's right. You should sit on tacks when you eat the maror. No, I just made that up. Don't take this seriously, folks. Okay, one should not recline. Go ahead.
One should not recline while reciting Birkat HaMazon, which must be recited with awe and reverence.
Shulchan Aruch.
Shulchan Aruch. Likewise, it is customary to refrain from Hassava while reading the Haggadah, so that it is recited with full concentration and seriousness. Mishnah Berurah. How to recline. Nowadays, people are not used to reclining on couches while eating, and it is therefore necessary to explain how to perform Hassava in a chair on the Seder night. Instead of sitting erect with one's back against the seat back, one slides his bottom forward to the middle of the seat so that he may lean back against the chair and tilts to the left. If possible, one should use an upholstered chair with armrests to try to use a pillow to make sitting more comfortable. Regardless, anyone who uses a chair with a backrest fulfills his obligation by reclining against the back of the chair and tilting it to the left. For this, too, is an expression of freedom. After all, an office worker, for example, must sit erect in his chair in order to carry out his work. But one who has no burdens can stretch out, lean back, and rest in a liberated manner. The reason for reclining to the left is that it is easier to eat this way. with the left hand and back reclining against the chair. The right hand, which we generally use, remains free to hold the matzah or wine. Additionally, some say that one who reclines to the right runs the risk of choking on his food and suffocating. Because of this risk, it was ruled that even a left-handed person must recline to the left and use his right hand on the Seder night. Bediavad, a right-handed person who mistakenly reclines to his right does not fulfill his obligation.
Ouch.
But a left-handed person who reclines to the right does. Shulchan Aruch.
Pretty severe. Get your left and right properly.
If one is sitting in the company of his rabbi or a leading Torah sage, he must ask his permission before reclining, because Hassava contains an expression of disrespect and irreverence towards the rabbi, and the mitzvah to honor the Torah takes precedence over the mitzvah of Hassava. But if one receives permission from his rabbi, then Hassava no longer constitutes a display of disrespect. Shulchan Aruch.
I gave permission a few times. I considered not, but I said, no. I gave permission a few times to students who were by my Seder. They asked me, they knew the halacha. They said, can we do Hassava? I said, let me think about it. Yes, please. We're much less formal nowadays. That's why we're all laughing, because, we're all sitting back right now in our chairs in front of the rabbi, right? That's normal. We're less formal. Yeah.
If someone is like
Ambidextrous. Right.
He should bend to both.
No. He gets to go straight up. Right. No, this everything has there's different sides to it. This is a very short summary. Of course, when you learn the halacha deeper, there's more and more reasonings which could lead you to lean to the left or lean to the right in each issue. But what happens if one forgets to recline? Believe it or not, even though we said at the beginning that there are opinions that say you don't have to recline at all anyways, the standard approach is that you have to recline. See, if you drink the cup without reclining, what do? Trouble. Reuven, go for it. Go for it. Reuven.
If one eats a kezayit of matzah without reclining, he does not fulfill his obligation, as he has not performed the mitzvah as the sages ordained it, and he must eat another kezayit while reclining. Even if one has already recited Birkat Hamazon, he must wash his hands again, recite Hamotzi, and eat a second kezayit while reclining. In this case, however, one does not recite Al Hakala Matzah, blessing a second time, because according to Avia and Ra'avan, he already fulfilled the mitzvah of eating matzah with the kezayit he ate without.
So pretty serious stuff. That's why, as I said in another class, the classic reminder that we're saying a lot of times on the Seder night is, don't forget to lean. After you say the Kiddush, you sit down to drink your wine, don't forget to lean. And when you eat the matzah, don't forget to lean. And then for the next month afterwards, whenever it's a regular Shabbat, we say, you make your Kiddush, but don't forget to lean, right? But really, it's only this night. And if you forget to lean, you're not fulfilling the mitzvah of matzah properly. You have to do it again. So it's keep going. What if one forgets to recline on Korach?
If one forgets to recline for Korach, he need not eat it a second time, since some poskim rule that Korach does not require Hassava because it contains marar. Le chaktila, we customarily recline for Korach, but if one forgets to do so, he may rely upon those who maintain that Hassava is not necessary. If one eats the afikomen without reclining, and he can easily eat another kezayit of afikomen while reclining, he should do so. But if eating another kezayit will be difficult for him, he may rely on Ra'avia and Ra'avan, who maintain that Hassava is not necessary.
Oh, that's a leniency, and it's very necessary. Sometimes you're at the afikomen, you've eaten the whole meal, you've had the whole Seder, you've been there for 4 hours, you're stuffed till the hilt. I forgot to lean while I ate the afikomen. I have to eat another piece of matzah. Whew. So he's lenient. He says you can rely on the Ravya and the Ravan in this case, and not do over the afikomen if necessary. Okay, go ahead.
If one drinks one of the 4 cups without reclining, the poskim are divided over whether or not he should go back and drink it a second time. According to Shulchan Aruch, he must indeed drink the cup again, this time reclining. According to Rema, though, this creates a problem, because by drinking again, one appears to be adding to the number of cups ordained by the sages. Therefore, if one drinks the second of the 4 cups without reclining, he must drink it again with Hassava, because the second cup precedes the meal. And since it is permissible to drink wine during the meal, one who drinks at this point does not appear to be adding to the required 4 cups. But if one forgets to recline while drinking the first, third, or 4th cup, he may not go back and drink it a second time, because doing so he would appear to be adding to the mitzvah. He may rely on Ra'avia and Ra'avan, who maintain that nowadays, when even important people are not accustomed to reclining, one need not perform Hassava on the Seder night. Shulchan Aruch and
Mishnah Berurah.
Shulchan Aruch's ruling that one must drink any of the 4 cups again with Hassava, and Ramah's similar ruling about only the second cup are the kaktila. If drinking again is difficult, one may rely on what he drank without Hassava and need not drink again.
Another leniency. Okay.
Women should preferably recline while eating matzah and drinking the 4 cups of wine, but if they forget, they need not eat or drink again. Important women who accidentally eat matzah without reclining should eat again while reclining.
What's this important women? Who's an unimportant word? Where does it come? It comes from the discussion from 800 years ago, the times of the Tosafot. And the Talmud is discussing this issue of Hassava, and they said, do women have to recline? And they said, well, women don't usually recline in front of men. And I believe it or not, I couldn't fathom this, but I actually saw it with my own eyes. When I was in Africa, on a short trip, there is the common custom is that when a woman speaks in front of a man, she kneels, no less sitting up or standing straight. She actually kneels. You don't address a man until you kneel in front of him. I saw it with my own eyes. So that when the sages in the Talmud were discussing, is it the natural practice for women to lean in front of men, I understand that was considered to be improper. It was improper. Women didn't lean in front of men. Along comes the Tosafot in 1200, about 500 years later, and says, our women are important women. In other words, the social structure has changed. And that, of course, women have a different place in society than they did in the ancient world and in the medieval times. And of course, now in modern times, the status of women has changed again more and more. Every day it changes. Now we don't even know who's a woman and who's a man. But whatever, that's another discussion. But the concept of, that's where this strange sentence comes out. It comes out funny in English. Important women. Who's the unimportant women? No. It's based on this Tosfot in 1200s, where he said that our women, they recline in front of men, and there's no problem, and therefore, if they do, then they have to. And but if a woman accidentally didn't, there's more room to play with it, because in the original Talmud it says women don't recline, and so of course the practice has changed. But b'di'evet, after the fact, there's more room to play with, more room for leniency, that she doesn't have to do this make-up, eating or drinking, and so forth. We'll stop here for today, and B'ezrat Hashem, continue preparing for Pesach tomorrow. Bruchim to you.
So the 4 cups.
Pesach's not tomorrow, but we'll be preparing.